If your country's gold is still sitting in the vaults of the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, you need to hurry up and move it back home right now before the US president seizes it. That was the title of an article by American professor Stephen Strauss last March. He was warning the nations of the world about the treachery of the US president and the potential for him to confiscate their gold reserves stored in America. In Strauss's view, America under the current administration could transform into a rogue superpower where the rule of law no longer matters. The vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York are the largest gold depository in the world, holding over 6,300 tons of gold. Most of this belongs to foreign central banks who have left it with the Americans for safekeeping, a tradition dating back over a century. However, recently, many countries have started to worry about the safety of their gold. This is especially true given the reckless and unpredictable policies of the current US administration. Fears have grown that the US president might seize their gold in New York for any number of reasons. Consequently, voices in countries like Germany and Italy are getting louder, calling for the immediate repatriation of their gold before, as they fear the US president loses it completely and actually does it. Germany and Italy are more concerned than anyone else, as they hold the second and third largest gold reserves in the world, with much of it stored in America. So the question is, will the Germans and Italians actually bring their gold back from America? Why are the Germans specifically so afraid for their gold? And could the US president really confiscate foreigners' gold? That's what we'll discuss together in today's episode. This is the Economy Reporter Plus. On the morning of February 24, 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin gave a speech watched by the entire world. He announced the start of his army's invasion of Ukrainian territory, launching what he called a special military operation. In that speech, Putin warned anyone who might try to intervene, saying that Russia's response would be immediate and lead to consequences they had never encountered in their history. The world took Putin's threat seriously, but while Ukraine's allies, led by the US, didn't intervene directly, they didn't stand idly by either. Their reaction was a major turning point in the global economic order. They imposed unprecedented economic sanctions on Russia, breaking rules we thought were stable pillars of the global economy. The most important rule broken was the sovereign immunity of the Russian central bank's assets. In late February 2022, the G7 nations, led by the US, decided to freeze Russia's central bank assets held within their jurisdictions valued at over $300 billion. This decision shocked the world, and Russia in particular. Russia never expected such an extreme move, at least not from Europe. The vast majority of the funds were in Europe, with over 190 billion euros held in Belgium alone. Freezing central bank assets isn't entirely new. It's happened to countries like Iran and Venezuela, but the Russian case was unique. This was done against a major power with incredible speed and on a massive scale. We're talking about over $300 billion snatched from Russia in an instant. Luckily for the Russians, that $300 billion wasn't all they had. Their total reserves were nearly $630 billion, including $132 billion worth of gold. And crucially, the Russian central bank issued a statement reassuring its people that all of Russia's gold reserves were stored safely in vaults on its own territory. If the Russians had been like other nations, storing that gold in New York or London, they would have been deprived of it, unable to use a single gram. What happened to Russia had unintended consequences. Many countries, regardless of their stance on the war, feared they might suffer the same fate. The idea that a state could suddenly lose its reserves, whether foreign currency or gold, is terrifying. The bottom line? Everyone learned the lesson. In this context, global central banks began moving away from the dollar in favor of gold, while simultaneously storing that gold on their own soil. In its 2023 survey of global sovereign asset managers, Invesco pointed out two very important things. First, central banks purchased record amounts of gold throughout 2022 and into 2023. And notably, these purchases were physical gold bullion. See, anyone can invest in gold by buying physical bars or by buying paper assets like derivatives or ETFs. But according to Invesco, central banks today have no appetite for paper gold. Why? Because those are just paper assets. America can freeze them with the stroke of a pen, just like they did with Russia's reserves. This is unlike physical gold, which you can hold in your hand and hide safely in your own vaults. This leads to the second major finding in the Invesco report. An increasing number of central banks have started repatriating their gold reserves from abroad. The percentage of central banks keeping their gold at home has reached 68%, up from 50% in 2020. The survey expects this figure to hit 74% within 5 years. Since his return, the U.S. president has been playing the role of the unpredictable madman. He has attacked America's friends, abandoned allies, and ignited trade wars, not to mention imposing tariffs on everyone. He has floated the idea of seizing the Panama Canal, suggested annexing Canada, and expressed a desire to control Greenland. While doing all this, he is trampling on American institutions. The courts can't restrain him, and the officials surrounding him agree with him out of fear. Governments around the world are watching in terror because many of their financial arrangements were based on the idea that the U.S. is a rational nation of institutions. Americans always flaunted this over the Chinese. We are a nation of institutions. You are a state controlled by one party. Today, under the current president, China, despite its issues, appears far more rational than the United States, from whom almost everyone, allies included, now expects anything. This feeling has been growing among the Germans and Italians, who hold the second and third largest gold reserves. The Germans hold over 3,350 tons, and the Italians own about 2,452 tons. Both countries store more than a third of these holdings 24 meters underground in the vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York. Specifically, Germany has 1,236 tons there, and Italy has 1,055 tons. With current gold prices, that's over $295 billion worth of German and Italian gold sitting in America. In the past, they had no reason to worry. But now the situation is different. No one would be surprised if the U.S. president woke up tomorrow and decided to seize Germany and Italy's gold. Theoretically, the gold is in the custody of the independent Federal Reserve, but no one can guarantee the Fed's continued independence. For this reason, voices are rising, demanding that Germany and Italy quickly bring their gold home. Last June, the Taxpayers Association of Europe urged them to repatriate the gold to ensure European control. Michael Yeager, the association's president, said, "We are very concerned regarding the president's manipulation of the Fed's independence." This sentiment was echoed by Italian commentator Enrico Grazzini. Interestingly, this was also the stance of Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni when she was in the opposition. But since coming to power, she has been silent on the issue, likely to avoid angering the U.S. president. The Germans are in the same boat. German politician Markus Ferber said, "I demand that we conduct periodic inventories and audits of German gold in America." Another official told the newspaper Bild they fear the president might resort to dipping into gold reserves. He asked, "What do we do if he decides to seize foreign gold?" He could invent a pretext, claim Germany owes debts to the U.S., and take the gold from us. This is exactly what Professor Stephen Strauss warned about. He advised foreign central banks, if your country stores its gold in New York, the right move is to withdraw it and bring it home immediately. This brings us to the question of the episode. In your opinion, if Germany or Italy tried to withdraw their entire gold reserves from New York, could the U.S. president prevent them? I'll be following your answers in the comments. If you liked the episode, subscribe to the channel and wait for new episodes. Thank you for watching.